All right. Happy, I don't know, it's not really spring yet. We're still at the tail end of winter. But Happy New Year, even though we're about a month in. All right. This is your navigational consultant, metaphysical scholar, Jim Ventura, an astrologer, here to give you a video about what does it mean to be an old soul. Now, if anybody who's got any sense of spiritual understanding, awareness has probably heard that term before. So it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but there is real meaning in understanding the concept of being an old soul. So one of the best, lots of different authors have talked about this subject that I've read about, but one of the best series of books that I read back in the 80s and the 90s was by an author named Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough, who wrote Messages from Michael. See the ominous Ouija board and dead people coming out. But originally it was channeled material, and it was originally came through a Ouija board, and eventually moved toward verbal channeling. But amazing material, and they go into great detail in explaining what soul age is. So that's what we're going to talk about today in part one of this video. So the concept of soul age is that there are actually technically, excuse me, technically 7 soul ages, and things would break into the number 7 in terms of a lot of things. But in terms of soul age, there are 7 soul ages manifest. 5 of them are really what we're going to primarily talk about, because the other 2 have to do with much more of where we are. We're sort of collected with our kind of larger soul group as well, and playing that from a different angle. So, and we will get to the old soul part shortly. So the 5 stages of soul development, understanding the early stages and getting toward old soul is very, very key. So, the best way I would describe it is when a person first kind of manifests in a physical body on the physical plane. That is what we call infant soul lives. They have no relation to age, by the way. You could be an infant soul at the age of 9 and even live to 89, although that's not that common with infant souls. So infant souls are more or less like what we call kind of fresh cast. So, there is kind of a sense of being closer to essence, to the Tao, to God at that point, but limited experience in the physical body. So again, we're talking about reincarnational cycles here. Very limited range of experience for infant souls. They're more apt to, if they experience something new, for it to scare them rather than be excited about it. Again, not a lot of experience under the belt. Their perception of people is it's me and not me. So the unknown is hostile. It's scary to them. Ultimately, because these are newer lifetimes, they need to be taught the laws of decency. This is where baby souls jump in, and we'll explain that shortly, to help out with that job. Love is generally seen more as lust. They don't see complicated positions in society or even in relationships. Ultimately, they're exploring survival. So, fishing, hunting, all those things are, early stage development, hunting, gathering. You can find infant souls in tribal areas. There's not a lot of infant souls on the planet right now, precisely because the planet is too complicated. So even if you're obviously far past the infant soul stage of your development, there can be a resonancy for many still with loving the idea of hunting and fishing and shooting and survival skills. If you watch shows like Naked and Afraid and things like that, they are exploring that, a lot of young souls, mature souls, old souls, experiencing some of that infant soul survival energy. So that's infant souls. So after a series of lifetimes, at least 7, usually more, one sort of quote unquote graduates toward being a baby soul. And the baby soul motto, to simplify this, is do it right or not at all. So they perceive the world as me and many other me's. Early beliefs that baby souls get tend to be unshakable. They're often pillars of the community. Many will seek to be like big fish, but often in small ponds, so to speak. They don't want, they can't handle the extreme, success that later on becomes very appealing to young souls in particular. Baby souls are about preserving the status quo, often very fundamental beliefs in forces of evil and good and evil, They tend to follow very strict moral codes. They can be very uneasy about sex. They do it more as a necessity, a part of their religious programming, and often to raise children, that being an important part of the baby soul experience. They often can be very kind of antiseptic and clean, bland cooking for baby souls. You know, think of groups like sometimes the NRA, the Rotary Club, authoritative religions, even the Ku Klux Klan, weirdly, is often somewhat of a baby soul structure. Again, traditions are often very important. It's a lot about good versus evil for the baby soul. So, you know, baby souls are responsible to set up the structure and order of society. Both my parents, my dad late baby soul and my mom mid baby soul, were very rigid about their politics and their religion and things of the nature. Again, that's very, very common for baby soul, because that's what it's about. It's about exploring. It's far more advanced than the infant soul, but it's about exploring structure. So then after lifetimes as a baby soul, you evolve toward what we call a young soul. Again, reminding you nothing to do with physical age. The young soul motto is more or less do it my way. This is a very adventurous kind of goal-setting stage in our development. The young soul often perceives things as being like, you're not like me necessarily, but I should try to change you and bring you to my point of view, the young soul perception. Often they will seek higher education. Achievement is ultimately the goal for the young soul. I always sort of humorously say it's the he who dies with the most toys wins stage of development, the most prominent on the physical plane in terms of accomplishment. They could be kind of extreme with sexual energy, either denying it or being very, very sexual. You know, pets a lot of times are status pets. I always think of, I can't think of her name now, that actress that always had back in the day, that had the little special dog that everybody had. Think of like company execs, successful in media, competing anywhere in the world for young souls. Often they're born into poor families and climb the ladder of success, or may even be born into wealth and achieve it that way. You know, our last president, Donald Trump, was kind of classic young soul. And everyone waiting for him to be deeply spiritual or sensitive, not in this life. You know, it's the purpose of the young soul is to be successful, to strive for that. You know, things like plastic surgery, very young soul. I'm going to try to live as long as possible. You know, young souls often learn to loss, interestingly enough. You know, there can be a little bit of soap opera feel to young soul lives, but there's just not quite the emotional depth yet. Again, because it's very much based on that energy of you know, being successful, of climbing the ladder in that way. Lots of famous young souls I can use as examples, of course. Okay, so I'm going to briefly touch upon the mature soul and the old soul. Mature soul, in after lifetimes as a young soul, the mature soul comes along, and the mature soul philosophy is now there's kind of an expansion of consciousness. Mature soul philosophy is do it anywhere but here. So it becomes much more open. Mature soul is about relationships, heavily explored. Mature souls perceive themselves, others as they perceive themselves. So this becomes a confusing stage because there's much more empathy and awareness. And, you know, the classic mature soul thing is like seeking a higher education and then maybe changing that at some point to something more meaningful. I'm going to talk more about old souls in the second video. This is the first video. And old souls, now we get into different territory. After multiple lives as a mature soul, the old soul is kind of the final gathering place. Old soul philosophy is you do what you want and I'll do what I want. Strong creativity. Often lots of talents and abilities collected from multiple lifetimes, but not necessarily a lot of drive for the old soul. There's often a really strong pull towards spirituality and self-deprecation and trying to find a way to fit into this world. And feeling weird or like the odd man out is something very common for old souls. Even though there's often a lot of wisdom, they often seek the path of least resistance for the old soul. So I just want to briefly touch upon the mature and old soul stages, and in my next video I'm going to go into that in much more detail. But I wanted to catch you up to some of the early stage developments as well too. But keep in mind, for most people, if you're drawn to this type of video, this type of seeking, you're going to likely be a mature or an older soul. Again, as you can see by the other soul ages, they're not wired as much for that type of exploration of consciousness and expansion. It's much more rigid in both the baby and the young soul stages. And I'll point this out real quick too. This is important. There's no good or bad stages. They're all evolutionary stages in our soul development of experience. All souls are capable of love and expression and even kindness or not being so kind. But with the older soul, there's a different type of a vibe that begins to come. And again, I will talk about that more in my next video within a month. If you're not already receiving my columns, you can go and email me. All that information is at jimventura.com. Also, I teach classes on these teachings, these Michael teachings. So that can be done in office here in Phoenix, or I can do those by phone or FaceTime and Zoom. So information about all that good stuff and a lot of other classes I teach are available on my website, again, jimventura.com. So hope you enjoyed the video. Get your brains thinking about different soul ages around us, and we'll get into more detail the next time. And again, ultimately the goal is to be understanding of other people and where their development is, as well as understanding ourselves. And that is good work.